will close the door. Please go ahead.
So I'll just begin by thanking you for doing this. It's great to be back here. I was here not that long ago, and I'll just say a couple of things. First of all, I just want to address the sort of substance of what we are putting forward, and where I think that falls in the continuum of the platforms of the parties, and then just a little bit about the horse race and where I think we are. So you all know that when I took part in the debate last week, I made a statement about being sorry that not more people in the province liked me, but not sorry about the things that we have done to make life better for people in the province. So I made a commitment to build the province up, to invest in the things that people need and that communities need to thrive. So whether that's roads, bridges, transit, people, making sure that everyone who's able to go to college or university can go regardless of their family income, so covering tuition. And where we find ourselves right now is the economy in the province is growing well. We are outstripping the growth of other parts of the country, and our unemployment rate is at the lowest it's been in nearly 20 years. That is not shared evenly across the province. The benefit of that's not shared evenly. And so that's why our plan going forward continues to invest in people. So that's what the child care commitment is about. That's what more home care, investment in hospitals, the commitment to developmental services, mental health commitment. So that investment is necessary, and we made a deliberate decision to go back into deficit, having balanced the budget, to go back into deficit to make those investments, because they are what's needed in order for us to continue to grow the economy and be strong. So that's the plan that we have been working on and bring to this election to continue. The other side, the other thing I want to talk just a little bit about is where we're at in the race. We know we're running third. We get that, and we believe that as we came into this race, there was a very strong appetite for change. We understood that. I think the election changed when people started to realize that Doug Ford really is not what is going to his plan or lack of plan is not going to benefit the province. And so where we find ourselves now is real scrutiny being applied both to what we have put forward, although I would say there's been scrutiny on us all along, but new scrutiny on Andrea Horwath and the NDP. And so that's the volatility, if there is volatility still in this election campaign. It's a tough campaign for us. We knew it would be, and it has not disappointed. And so we find ourselves today. And I'll just make one final comment on what happened yesterday in terms of Donald Trump slapping tariffs on aluminum and steel. I'm going to be talking more about that this morning, but I've had a conversation with folks from United Steelworkers, with the mayors of both Hamilton and Sault Ste. Marie, and I'll be talking to some of the CEOs later today. I mean, we have made a commitment to the steel industry in this province. We have been there. We have convened all partners in order for Stelco to be able to survive and workers to get the support that they need. We will continue to be there for the steel industry. I think the Prime Minister has done the right thing. I called for him to act quickly in terms of retaliating on the tariffs that Trump has put forward. The imposition of the tariffs makes no sense. I have spent months, over a year, talking with governors, talking with elected officials and business people, members of the administration in the United States. There is a deep understanding that we are an integrated economy, or integrated economies, and that we supply different parts of the supply chain with our steel, and this will cost people on both sides of the border, and it will cost jobs potentially. But we will be there to work with the steel industry as we have been, and we will put money on the table to make sure that we bridge this. I hope it's a short-lived situation, but we will certainly be there to work with the federal government and with the steel industry. So I just wanted to end with that because I think it's probably top of mind in this town today.
Are there measures that you might contemplate or you are contemplating that are specifically provincial direct measures? I prefer not saying retaliation, but are there things that, we know what Ottawa's doing. Are there things that, aside from supporting the steel industry and supporting the mayors and the municipalities perhaps, but are there things that you might do to, more directly than that to
Well, yeah, and that's an interesting question, Howard, because we have done that, as you know, with the New York situation. We did take a retaliatory measure. We passed legislation. We have made that clear that we're not unwilling to do that. I think right now our role is more to be there to support workers if there's need for short-term support for workers, if there's job loss, or if whatever may flow out of this, we need to be there as a partner with those supports in place. If the federal government, because we're working hand in glove with them, if the federal government needs us, or if there's a space that where we can be helpful in terms of some sort of response, then we will absolutely do that. But right now, I think that the retaliatory, and I am using that word retaliatory because we're dealing with a bully. Trump is a bully. Trump is apparently unconcerned about both the people in his jurisdiction, and I wouldn't expect him to be concerned about the people in our jurisdiction, our workers, but he's unconcerned about the impacts of his actions. So I think retaliation is a fine word to use. We don't want to be in a trade war. That's what it looks like we're heading into right now. We'll work with the federal government, but right now I don't see that there's a place for us to put a retaliatory measure in place. I think we need to be a support partner for both the industry and for the federal government.
Just one more question, and then I'll get out of the way on this. But you said that you have been speaking with the steel company executives and mayors, etc. Do you have any sense of what kind of supports might be in the offing for the steel companies? For example, if such supports are needed, what kind of thing are we talking about? Tax?
Yeah, so right now, I've spoken to one CEO so far, and right now, because steel prices are high, they're okay. And at least the one I haven't spoken with Stelco yet, but I think what they're saying is, at least what this one CEO said, is that as long as the prices stay high, they're going to be able to pay the tariff. They're going to be able to survive. But if steel prices go down, that's what they're worried. So I just don't think we know the answer to that question yet.
Why do you suggest the tariffs might be short-lived?
Because I think that the American industry and the American public is going to see a serious impact of this. On the face of it, it sounds like, okay, well, you protect your steel workers, we'll protect ours. But the fact is, we supply steel, different products in different parts of the supply chain. So it's not going to be possible for manufacturers to not buy Canadian steel. They're going to have to still buy Canadian steel, and Canadians are going to have to still buy American, because they make different products, and that's the piece that it seems to have gotten lost in this. So as those costs go up for business and therefore for the consumer, I think there's going to be a reaction. I think already the steel industry in the States is reacting. And aluminum. I'm talking steel because it's Ontario, but you better believe Premier Couillard in Quebec is going to be talking about aluminum.
When you were here earlier this week, you mentioned that you don't believe that either Doug Ford or Andrea Horwath would be equipped to go into these negotiations, or at least, as knowledgeable as you. So should you not end up in the Premier's chair after June 7th, would you be prepared to work with either Mr. Ford or Ms. Horvath to sort of connect them with the people that you've been working with, or sort of grease the wheels of that transition, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, I mean, we need to work together on this. And I was very disappointed yesterday when I actually called on both Doug Ford and Andrea Horvath to, you know, take common cause with the federal government on this, because it's really not a partisan issue. And, you know, Doug Ford kind of ignored the whole thing, and Andrea Horvath said that if she were the Premier, she'd talk to governors, and that I hadn't done anything and that we had failed. I mean, that response, which was completely partisan, worries me very much, because first of all, it indicates a real lack of understanding of what's going on, because I've talked to 37 governors, I've been in the States, they have come here, I've talked to other elected officials and with business leaders. So to not understand that that work has been ongoing is, you know, to really not understand the situation. So that's what worries me about their response to the situation. And, you know, quite frankly, we have not had a question in the House from Andrea Horvath on American trade, I don't think, ever. There have been questions on other free trade agreements, but those have been all anti-free trade. So of course, I'll do whatever I can, in whatever role I'm in, to make sure that we protect the workers of this province. That is our objective, to protect the business, to protect people's families depend on how we respond and how this goes. To be in an extended trade war with the United States, who are our closest trading partner and ally, makes absolutely no sense. So I'll do whatever I can.
Are you not concerned that calling Trump a bully may fan the flames?
Look, we've worked so hard, and I've been so careful. Our industry, our business community, our workers need to know that we are going to take the strongest stance possible. And I think that people also need to understand that we understand, and I was on American radio this morning saying, you know, this is an irrational action. It makes no sense because it will hurt his own as it will hurt us. So it is the action of a bully, and I need to make that clear, that in the context of that, we have to stand up, because there are people who might say, well, why would you support the federal government retaliating and taking us into a trade war situation? Because we've tried everything else. That's why. You know, we've tried stroking the ego. We've tried being rational and civil and all of those things, and none of it has worked. This is not a rational environment that we're operating in.
You mentioned earlier that there would be you would put money on the table to make sure that we get through this okay. Can you speak to what that would mean specifically for Hamilton, where we've got tens of thousands of jobs either directly or sort of more further out of the the center related to steel? So
there are a number of things that may be needed. What we will do is we will work with all of the players in whether it's the unions, whether it's the company, whether it's the federal government. We'll work to play our part, as we have in the Stelco situation, by convening and advancing money and making sure that everybody who needed to be at the table is at the table. There are some really specific things like training and retraining, that those dollars are provincial dollars. They are there. They will continue to be there, and we will step that up to whatever extent we need to. So, we'll be looking for the practical ways that we can help to make sure that this industry survives through this.
Also, the fact that this is happening right in the heat of an election campaign, if an election campaign weren't going on, I imagine that all of your efforts as Premier would be focused on this issue.
Indeed.
So now you're sort of wearing this campaigning hat, but you're also wearing the Premier hat and trying to deal with that. So can you speak to how you're sort of managing to do both when they're both extremely sort of important files?
Yeah, we have to be clear that this is, of course, it becomes part of the discussion in the election, but it is quite separate and apart from a particular political outcome. I mean, I was having conversations this morning, as I say, with mayors and with folks from the steel industry, as the Premier, saying, I don't know what's going to happen after June 7th, but up until then and past then, if I am there, this is what we will do. These are the support. So I have to bridge that election date, but workers and companies and communities need to know that we're not stepping back and just letting this thing unfold. We are going to be very intentional and very present, and officials in government know how supportive we have been and are part of that support. So there's going to be no gap, and that's what we've been trying to make clear over the last 48 hours.
One of the things that we hear and read and been well publicized is that a pretty big issue for a lot of people in the election is Hydro One. And I think it would be fair to say almost most of what we hear is that people aren't happy about that. A lot of people, in fact, are very unhappy. And some people are saying that's why I'm not going to vote for you guys because you sold off Hydro One. So here's my question about that. We understand why you did it. You told us that before.
Yeah.
But do you think, in hindsight, it would have been better to perhaps talk about that in the last election, maybe, saying that that's something that was part of what I think burns a lot of people is they feel like they were broadsided by that.
Yeah.
Where did this come from? So might you have done that differently to avoid that problem?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know. We hadn't made the decision. So, what I did say in the last election is that we were going to look at the assets that were owned by the province in order to leverage, I used the word leverage them, to build new assets. That's what I said. We hadn't landed on what that meant, and we were looking at all the options. So, would it have been better to have been able to be clear about that? Yeah, if we'd made the decision already. Would it have been better to have given people more information in the run-up to making that decision? Yes, and I can take full responsibility for that I don't think people were prepared or made the connection between opening up the ownership of Hydro One and building the transit and the roads and bridges that we have used that money for. So I think that is certainly an area. But I think the other thing that's happened is that the increase in electricity prices as a result of the investments that we made to rebuild the system that was degraded, which I think we also talked about the last time I was here, which is billions of dollars to build, wire lines and poles and shut down the coal-fired plants and replace that power. All of that, that money that has meant that electricity prices were going up, that's been conflated with the Hydro One issue. And that's been conflated, it's been conflated intentionally, particularly by the NDP, because the NDP wants people to believe that electricity prices are going up solely because we opened up the ownership of Hydro One. In fact, that has nothing to do with it. The reason electricity prices went up was because we made those investments to make the system reliable. The ownership of Hydro One it was about finding those dollars to invest in transit and transportation. I think the other reason that people, and I understand it, people are upset about the ownership issue around Hydro One is that, again, there's been this notion that somehow we sold off Niagara Falls, we sold off the nuclear plants. It hasn't been clear that we sold a piece of that former company, and that it was about the transmission and it was about the poles and the wires. So I think there have been some very deep misunderstandings that have been capitalized on by the opposition and the third party, and that's not to blame them. That's just to say that's the reality. And our responsibility was to communicate that better.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sorry. So I know people in your situation don't like to play hypothetical games in advance of what's going to happen on June 7th. I understand that. Of course, the media does love to do that.
Yes, it's your favorite thing,
So
right?
I would be remiss if I didn't ask one of those types of questions.
Right.
So, there's a finite number of outcomes. On June 7th, you may return to power, and you may not. But you may also then be in a position where you hold the balance of power. And that might make you and your party, have some attraction to your rivals. If that's the case, and you end up in a situation where you hold sort of the balance of power, of the two rivals that you're facing right now, or the two rival parties, which one do you have a greater affinity towards? Because you may have to work with one or the other, or there will be overtures to you. How would that play out?
Yeah. So I won't engage, you're right, in the specifics around mechanics and what any of that might look like. We just don't know what June 7th will look like. I will say that I think to give either Doug Ford or Andrea Horwath the majority, I think would pose different but real challenges to continuing to grow the economy, to continuing to provide the care and supports that people need. And I've been quite clear that I have virtually no affinity with Doug Ford and what he is proposing for this province. Now, we don't really know the details of what he's proposing because he won't tell people. He won't tell the people of this province what would be entailed in finding what we think is $40 billion. That would be cuts over 3 years. And you can't take $40 billion out of services in this province without hurting deeply education and healthcare. So I have no affinity for the way he is campaigning or apparently his value system. And I've also been equally clear that there are a lot of similarities between what Andrea Horwath and the NDP are putting forward and what we're putting forward. Absolutely. There are some fundamental differences in that we are what I see ourselves as practical problem solvers, We don't sit down at a table and say, is this a left-wing idea or is this a right-wing idea? We look for the fairest path through the middle. And quite frankly, that's why I'm a liberal, because I'm not tied to the ideology of one group in the province or one philosophy. I am looking for the best solution for the largest number of people. But having said that, I have much more of an affinity to the value system of the NDP and Andrea Horwath than I do to the Conservatives. But honestly, when Andrea Horwath says that she will never look at back-to-work legislation or she will not work with for-profit private childcares that are providing great licensed childcare to kids, those are the kinds of rigid ideas that just set us apart. We're just different in that way.
So when you say you won't talk about the mechanics, are you referring to you won't talk about the possibility or impossibility of a coalition government?
Well, Andrea Horwath has ruled that out. And again, you said that there are a limited number of options, but I think there are many ways that parties can relate depending on the configuration. I am the only leader who has actually worked in a minority as a leader. The first year that I was the premier, we were in a minority situation. We got a budget passed. So I actually have had that experience. And so, we'll see what happens on June 7th. But again, I will be looking for the best possible way to get things done for the people of the province that aligns with my value system, with our understanding of the care that's needed at this point in our history.
Well, if I parse that, it sounds like you're open to an arrangement. Is that fair?
I'm not going to commit to that.
You're not even committing to being open to it?
I'm open to finding solutions for the people of the province that are consistent with my belief in what's needed. And our plan lays out what we believe is needed.
I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you something about your comments at the very beginning and your statements recently that people don't like you and sorry, not sorry. I find that really fascinating, and I want to ask you, first of all, why
Yeah.
you're doing that,
Yeah.
and second of all, if you could speak to whether you think people don't like you if there are elements of misogyny, homophobia involved in that dislike?
So I think that the first part of that question is easier than the second.
Right.
The reason I said that, and the reason I have used that construction is that if my candidates go to a door and they're greeted with someone saying, "Well, I like you, but I just don't like your leader," and they can't put their finger on why they don't like me, but that gets in the way of having a conversation about what's actually in our platform and what the supports are that people are actually interested in, then I wanted to clear that away. I wanted to just say, look, let's separate these things. So, I really am sorry that more people don't like me. That's something that apparently is a given. And so I want to acknowledge that. But now can we talk about what's actually happened, how we've built the province up, how the things that we have done are changing people's lives. So the mom that I met in Eastern Ontario yesterday, whose daughter is able to move out of home because the minimum wage has been raised. She's been living with her mom, she hasn't been able to get out, and she's able to do that now because the minimum wage has been raised. Or the young boy who came up to me and said, I'm in university because my tuition is covered, and my little brother is going to be graduating from high school, and my family doesn't have to worry about him going because his tuition will be covered too. So let's talk about that, and because we've set aside this other personality thing. So that's why I did it. And why people don't like me, again, I think you guys are going to have to sort that out. The pundits.